it's something that as superintendents or executive leaders, we read this and we nod along to it, but we're not really willing to do it in practice and especially in public in the limelight.
I told them that some days I might have questions, some days I might want to take your advice, but some days I just want to cry and I want you to be a good listener.
My gratitude cup is overflowing and it's spilling onto other people. And when it's almost impossible to be stressed out if you're sharing gratitude.
What would be the biggest problem right now that you have that you want that AI tool to solve for?
What's a pain point in my life that AI could solve?
Perfect. So welcome my fellow educators and school leaders. I'm Avanash, co-founder of Tomo Club, and we have another very special guest for our podcast today, Dan Stecken. He is the superintendent at Seneca Township High School, and it is a very interesting story, but of course, I want to let Dan speak for himself. If you can, Dan, welcome to the show. And if you can give a introduction about yourself.
Thank you for having me on. I'm really excited to be a part of this. I'm the superintendent at a rural Illinois school district, Seneca, Illinois, in the northern part of the state, a little bit south of Chicago. We're outside of the suburbs, but we're a little farm community that's right next to the suburbs. So we have a really unique setup at our school that we're very proud of. A lot of great traditions, a lot of great things happening within our district. And I've been the superintendent for 5 years now. I've been at the school district for 22 years, teacher, coach, worked my way up, and sort of accidentally, I became a leader in superintendency through helping other people that I became friends with that were really, really drowning because of a variety of topics, politics, their boards of education, community issues, staff issues. I've always been a coach. I've always been somebody that tries to elevate other people. Servant leadership is something that's a passion of mine. And as I discovered early in my superintendency career that while I love the job, a lot of people are not as blessed in the situation that I'm in I'm surrounded by great people, who allow me to do my job and support me doing my job. And unfortunately, a lot of other leaders are not in environments that are like that. And so through just my coaching experience and leadership, a lot of people have turned to lean on me. How would you handle this, Dan? Hey, I need help. What would you do here? And I sort of created a movement unintentionally that helps leaders deal with resiliency, deal with grit, tough conversations, doing hard things. And it's kind of become just a way of life for me now that I lead my district, but then I help a lot of other people outside of that, and something that I'm very proud of with our Stressed Leaders movement.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Illinois is always special to me. I did my majors from University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, and I actually work with a couple of districts in Illinois. So yeah, I'm super pumped. And of course, I have a huge respect for the entire campaign that you've been running. And our topic of today is also around similar lines, that how do you lead with resilience? And I hope I also ask some thought-provoking questions today that actually makes you think and won't be boring. So what do you think school leaders need the most? Let's start with that.
Man, that's a loaded question. What do we need the most? I think I'll answer that question with something that a lot of people will read in books and they'll nod along as they read it, but then applying it in practice is something very different. So I tell people that I've got two very good habits. One is that I'm consistent. Consistency is a superpower for me. But number two, what do all leaders need? My second superpower is vulnerability. And I think it's something that, you can read people that are much more intelligent than I, like Brene Brown, and she talks about vulnerability. And you can read that book and nod along. And I wrote a book, Stress Leaders, Stay in the Game. And I talk about being vulnerable in there. It's real, it's raw.
Yeah.
But I think it's something that as superintendents or executive leaders, we read this and we nod along to it, but we're not really willing to do it in practice and especially in public in the limelight. I mean,
Hmm.
let's face it, as superintendents, we're always on. There's no
Yeah.
boundaries anymore. I mean, this thing has eliminated boundaries for what we do. I mean, it's not 1994.
Hmm.
I'm getting emails at 9:30 at night, 10 o'clock at night. I'm getting notifications at 5 a.m. And if you don't set boundaries, you're going to drown. And it's really easy for a leader to say, yeah, you know what? I'm not going to check my email. I'm going to set that boundary. The reality is, we're sometimes too afraid of how what everyone else will think of us
Yeah.
that we don't allow ourselves to have those boundaries because what will the community members think if they can't get a hold of me? What will my board members think if I don't respond to this text message? What will my principal think if I don't answer his email at 9 o'clock at night?
Hmm.
And we wear this suit of armor that, hey, I was a head coach, I'm the superintendent, I'm strong, I'm tough.
Yeah.
And we don't allow ourselves to be vulnerable because we're so afraid of what everybody else will think. I
Right.
think that's something that all leaders can be better at. And I know it's taken me some time to admit that publicly and not be afraid of what somebody else might think.
Right. No, absolutely. I think so. School leaders need boundaries. I think that's the takeaway for me. And in fact, not even school leaders, anyone who's in executive position need boundaries. Um, I'm gonna ask you something personal, So you talk about resilience, you talk about grit. Has it ever happened that you were almost exhausted and about to quit? Has it happened to you before?
Absolutely. It's a great question. And unfortunately, um, I see in what I do, I see leaders every day leaving education. And that's a pain point for me right now. It's not as big of a problem in my district. But as my network has grown both in Illinois and nationally, it's exactly what I'm seeing everywhere to the point where I ask myself this question. I also ask it publicly. If people are dying on the vine and they're leaving this industry that is so powerful, I mean, we're raising children
Right.
and they're leaving this industry, what's it going to look like in 5 years? We can't just sit back and say that I love AI. I use it a lot, but I also recognize the importance of relationships that are always going to be more important than technology. And if people are leaving our industry in droves, especially in leadership positions, because it is hard. I mean, this job's
Right.
hard.
Yeah.
And if people are leaving, what's the future going to look like? And you asked me, have I ever been in that situation? Oh my
Hmm.
gosh. My second year as superintendent, I got into a tough spot and said, what the hell am I doing? I
Hmm.
I didn't know. And it that led me on a personal journey of making myself better, filling my own cup first. I went on a personal physical journey through just fitness and nutrition. But as I saw myself growing in that capacity, I quickly realized that I wasn't just leveling myself up personally, I was leveling up everybody around me, that my cup was getting so full of just gratitude and improvement that it was spilling over onto everybody else. And that's actually how this stress leaders thing kind of came out.
Hmm.
Um, Unintentionally, I've just been helping people and the book that I wrote is all about that. And yeah, I've faced that burnout dilemma. I was working 80, 90 hours a week because I wanted my district to be so great. I wanted my own leadership to be so dependable. And what's sad is that, we've all got these full plates, right? And we just keep piling on and on and on. And when you build that plate and it's so full of all these millions of things you're doing, the things that get pushed to the outside of your plate, your wife, your kids, your personal health, eventually they might fall off the plate. So yeah, I faced that reality, and it was a very tough conversation with the man in the mirror.
Hmm.
And they joke in the superintendency that they're going to write your job posting before they ever write your obituary. They're going to advertise someone else to sit in this chair that I'm in right now on my lunch break at work on a Friday in summer they're gonna advertise that job before they come deliver the eulogy at my funeral.
Right.
So while I love my school district and it's an amazing place to work and heck, I live just down the road from my school, from my office.
Hmm.
I love it, but I also know it's got a shelf life. It's going to end at some point. But being the best dad, being the best husband, being a great friend, those are the things that need to get pushed back to the center of my plate, so that I don't face that burnout and that I don't face those personal challenges that I did, 3, 4 years ago.
No, I'm so glad you like instantly got that vulnerable and shared that information with us, because it's not easy to accept what you just did. And um, and when I saw your profile and I saw that for 20 years you've been at the same district, I actually rechecked that did I read it right, because I've been talking to so many school leaders, and I could see that an average lifespan of a superintendent is not more than 3 to 5 years right now. And
Yeah,
whenever we are actually working with a school leader, we have realized that unless they have worked for 3 years, it's very difficult for them to bring any change, because
yeah,
it takes trust to develop with the people, especially if you're bringing a change. Otherwise, they will think that, okay, this guy is just trying to create havoc, and they'll not be compassionate with your ideology. So I was just thinking on the same lines that, if people are on an average leading the district and leaving them within 5 years, how are they going to bring a dramatic change? They're just doing the job. And I know people who have quit because of politics, because of not able to deal with boards, not able to manage personal life, um, had divorced because of that. So I've know few people in the superintendent state at that level. So yeah, I'm so glad you could share that personal story.
I'm glad to share it, and it's kind of, I want to walk my talk. Say I can't just say that vulnerability is a superpower and then not actually deliver on that. I mean, that's something that I hope that all young leaders, coaches, and even veterans, it's hard to do that because you care so much about your image, about perception, about how you look in
Mhm.
the community, in your district, and I joke with people. I've been in this district for over 20 years, and I don't plan on leaving, at least not voluntarily. Um, and I could go up into the city and the suburbs and make a lot more money, but I love this little area I live in and work in, and it's a special place to be. That could change someday. It could be my choice. It could be somebody else's choice. A good friend of mine says, sometimes as superintendents we think it could be a 4-3 vote that gets you out the door.
Yeah.
And he reframed that for me in a really, really good perspective and said, Dan, it's not a 4-3 vote. It's one decision that you make. And you talked about trust, and trust is something that takes years to build, but seconds to break.
Right.
And I've been in my district for over 20 years, and guess what? When you're a leader, you're not going to make everybody happy. Sadly, there's a couple people within my district that aren't hoisting the trophy that says Dan Stecken Superintendent of the Decade. They're
Mhm.
out there. I know that. And having difficult conversations in leadership is tough. And then telling people the things they don't want to hear is tough.
Right.
But if we're doing this to make the best decisions for the betterment of our students and for the betterment of our district, sadly, those difficult conversations have to happen.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, but tell me one thing, like you mentioned these skills, resilience, grit, consistency, discipline, boundaries. How do you keep on honing these skills? Like how do you remain on top of them? Because as you said, they have an impact on us which keeps on diminishing unless you replenish it. It's like a gym, right? So how do you do that?
I think your metaphor for the gym is a great segue into how I do this. Okay, so first things first. I was a varsity head coach for 14 years, and I was pretty good at it. I retired and became an administrator, and the next year, the Coaches Association inducted me into the Hall of Fame.
Mm.
I was blessed that I was surrounded by good kids that believed in what we were trying to do and worked hard, and we won a lot of games. Even though I did that for a long time and was successful, when you talk about grit and resilience, some of the ways people think that you develop grit and resilience is, oh yeah, you just work harder. You
Yeah.
just try harder. You just don't fail. And there is something to that. You develop a toughness, a thick skin. But even though I was a varsity head coach for 14 years and an administrator now for 8, um, I didn't realize until I was near that burnout point 4 years back, let's just say, that even though I was a successful coach, even though I was a successful administrator, I still didn't have all the answers when it came to coaching, when it came to developing grit and leadership and resilience and boundary setting. I needed somebody to help me too. So being vulnerable, I went exploring. I looked for coaches out there. I mean,
Okay.
there's a very real science to what we consider mental coaching.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people in leadership, again, they're not vulnerable and they won't admit that they don't know that. The easy solution is, how do you develop more grit and more resilience? You just work harder.
Mhm.
Instead of working 70 hours a week, you work 75, and I'm just too strong. I'm too tough. I mean, I can go and I mean, I would tell you, I've been trying to bench a certain number for like 2 years now, and I haven't hit it yet, but I'm like this close.
Mhm.
And I could easily, I mean, I'm 44 years old. Getting the bench press number that I want, that doesn't really matter anymore, but I'm trying and I'm still working at it. But it wasn't until I actually worked with somebody who knew more about weightlifting than I did
Right.
that I've gotten to this point. I mean, it's you have to be vulnerable to say, even though I sit at the top chair in the top seat in my district, I don't know everything. There's
Wow.
other people out there who know more than me. And being vulnerable, opening up, asking other people for help, that's so key in what we do. And sadly, a lot of leaders are unwilling to do that, and then that eventually leads them to that burnout.
Right. No, I can't agree with you more. And I actually implemented that strategy for myself almost like 8 to 10 months ago. I got like three mentors, three advisors, and I requested them that I'll take 1 hour per week with them. So I had a recurring calendar invite with them, and
Good for
I
you.
told them, I told them that some days I might have questions, some days I might want to take your advice, but some days I just want to cry and I want you to be a good listener. Because
Well, yeah, that's good. I like the listening part because that's something that leaders aren't very good at either, too, sometimes, is we have all the answers, so we don't want to listen.
yeah, and I told them that maybe I cannot always be very authentic, and maybe my wife doesn't understand or my friend might not understand my line of work. But so I was very particular to choose former superintendents as my advisors because nobody can better understand uh, that how does an edtech company is functioning and how they're trying to sell and how they're trying to network. So I think that strategy has worked wonders for me, and I'm glad you could also find some mentors for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I maybe like you, maybe not. I sought out people that were not in education because I wanted people that um that could speak to a business lens, could speak
Mhm.
to a corporate leadership world. That's sometimes schools are their own unique beast. They have their own challenges, they have their own realities, a lot more red tape, but at the same time, you're leading people. I mean,
Right.
that's what you're doing. You're leading people, and man, some people are harder than others to get that buy-in. You know that with the world you're in. And yeah, I've been blessed that I've had some people in my life that have been influential on who I've become as a leader. And I'm still growing. I've got a 17-year-old and a 12-year-old, and my goal number one in life is to be the best dad I can be and be the best role model I can be for them. But I still fail every single day at it. And I think that's part of relationship building. I think that's why I got into education 20 plus years ago, was just to help people. And if I can now, in the 2/3 of the way through my career, if I can provide that support to others, man, that's so uplifting. I always say my gratitude cup is overflowing and it's spilling onto other people. And when it's almost impossible to be stressed out if
Hmm.
you're sharing gratitude.
100%.
I go out of my office when I got a problem I'm dealing with, and I'll just go talk to somebody and let them know about some of the things I'm proud that they're doing. and you
Mm.
instantly put a smile on your face and their face.
Right.
So it's hard to be stressed when you're giving someone else an attaboy and then sharing it with somebody else. I mean, it's hard to get stressed out with that.
Wow. I think you gave me an idea that I should definitely look for one more diverse mentor, maybe from a different line of work, because they might bring in a fresh perspective, or sometimes they might trivialize the thing that I am creating as a big pile of thing in my head, and might be very simple for them. So I think you gave me a very good idea. I should definitely put that into my agenda of one of how.
Absolutely. I will tell you that one of the mentors that I work with is half my age. He's
Mm,
an entrepreneur and he brings different perspectives to me that I never even considered.
mm.
And there's been a lot of growth for myself in that. And again, most 44-year-old superintendents would not reach out to a 23-year-old entrepreneur for support and ideas. But I tell you what, it's been powerful for me.
Wow. And I'm glad you brought up the dad part. Like I'm a dad of a 1-year-old baby, and I already feel.
Oh, and congratulations.
Thank you so much. So when I heard from you that, even after 17 years, you're still trying and still have this feeling that you are failing and still trying, that gives me a little comfort that it's okay. And
Yeah.
otherwise it does makes me sometimes overwhelmed also. Um, I actually want to ask that you did say that your positivity cup or your gratitude cup can overflow and inspire other, but you might not be touching base with everyone on a regular basis, right? So how do you develop that? How do you foster that attitude which you are carrying in your school staff or administrators or maybe students as well?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm gonna be honest with you and tell you I'm far from perfect at it. I mean, let's face the reality as an administrator that I've got in my district about 90 employees, right? And I would love to tell you that 90 of them are perfect. They're not. I've got some that I said are not carrying the championship banner for Dan Stecken as superintendent of the world.
Yeah,
So it's very easy to avoid those people because they're energy vampires, man. They are culture suckers.
yeah,
It's very easy to avoid them if I want to. But one of the things I've grown in recently is I've had more difficult conversations, but then I've worked on trying to broach the subject of after the difficult conversation. How do you keep working on that relationship? And that's hard. It's
right.
hard, but it's easy as a leader because it's uncomfortable. Just avoid it, right?
Mhm.
That's easier. Avoid that uncomfortability, but as part of just kind of one of my ethos in my life is I want to do hard things and I want to challenge myself. And that's physical, that's mental, that's personal, it's professional. So one of the things I do that's going to sound kind of cheesy is
Mhm.
I've got this little notebook. It's old school, it's paper, but
Mhm.
I've got a little map of our district in there, of our building and with the people, and I'll try to check boxes and hit these people throughout the week or the month.
Mhm.
Um, I've also started using a piece of software that's an ed tech startup called Libra. And Libra's got connection points that Matt Wenzel's helped create that have been great for me to remind myself that, hey, I haven't talked to this teacher in 3 weeks now. I need to go make a connection and touch base with that teacher and make sure that I'm working on that relationship. And what's cool about it is that it gives me an opportunity to make sure that I'm not missing the mark. But then it's got a really cool AI feature in it that helps me control where that conversation's been going and then continue to reach out with it. So I think in the world of ed, um, there's this really cool abundance mentality
Mhm.
that, I mean, there's so many ed tech companies out there and they
Yeah.
all provide so much value. But for me as a busy superintendent, if you can find ways to make me more efficient and better at what I do, bring
Mhm.
it. No. And I kind of joke with a guy a couple days ago, a superintendent that I respect, and I said, no offense, it's not 1996, and I don't have to be a superintendent just like you. You're
Mhm.
great at what you do, but we're not the same person, and we're not going to do the job the same way. I'm teasing around a couple book ideas for my next book that I'm writing, and one of them is I'm calling it a rookie's guide to the superintendency. And there is no playbook. I mean, you can buy books on theory on how to be a superintendent, but the reality is, to me, it's always about relationships and growing those relationships. So I want to make sure that I'm doing my best part at that. But I tell you, it's hard. It's easy to avoid that discomfort with those employees, and it's easy to get buried behind your desk with all the millions of things you got to do.
No, I can't agree with you more on that part. Um, I also have a like a different school of thought. Like when we were growing up, the power dynamics were more towards educators. Like my parents used to give a free hand to my teachers to do whatever they want to get me straight. And I could see that changing uh, paradox of power, where I could see that when my brothers and sisters were having babies and they were sending the kids to school, they were much more involved. Of course, they had less number of babies, they have more financial freedom, hence they have more mind share, and hence they are more involved with the teachers, make undermining, or I would say taking away some power from them. And that did made those teachers also feel that why they should care, right? When parents are so much after their lives. So how has
Mhm.
that been in your case, and how do educators deal with that kind of change?
Man, you got a lot of great questions here today. This is great. I think I can answer this in a variety of layers. So the first layer is I'm a dad, right? I mean, I'm a dad. My daughter's going to be a senior in high school. She goes to the high school that I lead.
Hmm.
Um, she's a great kid. She's got the work ethic that I'm so proud of, but she's also got a lot of my bad habits. So I know that. So obviously you want to see your kid be successful. I mean, that's job number one as a parent. My kid's got to be happy and successful. So as a dad, I recognize that I want to see that. But then I can also take my dad hat off and put my superintendent hat back on and my former teacher hat on and say, I want to make sure that my teachers have the autonomy to teach the way that they see fit, best fit. They're
Right.
professionals. I respect them. I trust them. I want to make sure that as a dad, I'm sort of laissez-faire, hands off.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, the teachers have my kid and I trust the teachers. I think there's a deeper conversation nationally that educational respect has lost some of its luster, which is so sad because
Right.
teachers and school administrators, paraprofessionals, custodians, lunch ladies, bus drivers, those jobs are paramount to the success of our future in our nation.
Right.
And I don't want to get into a political discussion because we could be all over the place there, but
Yeah.
I think there's just not as much respect for the profession as there used to be nationwide, and I find that to be quite sad. So as a superintendent, I want my teachers to feel empowered. I want them to feel respected. And I think one of the ways that we try to do that at Seneca is we tell our story. We tell our story so loudly in social media, in our newsletter, in our magazines, in our emails, in our public messages. We tell it so loud because let's face it, if you're not telling your story as a school district, somebody else is.
Yeah.
And in a lot of cases, that somebody else is a disgruntled parent. It is a 45-year-old guy who was upset that he was never made quarterback of the football team in 1994.
Yeah.
It's the angry taxpayer who thinks you're charging too much in property taxes. And if you're not telling all the great things happening in your school district, somebody else is going to fill that void. So we tell our story loud and proud with a lot of Irish pride because I want to make sure people know how great my kids are. And I want to see that success in our staff, and I want to see them take pride in coming to work every single day. And the last thing I would say about that, this is a parent, this is a superintendent, former teacher. Every kid that's in my classroom in this building is somebody else's kid. It's somebody else's son or daughter. And if you try to teach that class like my son was sitting in the front row, you would teach the hell out of that thing, right? So
Yeah.
one of the things I tell our teachers is pretend like you're teaching your own kid.
Hmm.
I understand. I was a teacher for 14 years. There's some days where you don't want to teach that kid. I get it. And I think I was that kid growing up, and thankfully my two children are not. But I also understand that I'm going to approach my own two children with so much pride and passion that if I can teach the kids in my classroom like that, I'm going to be so much better of a teacher. And I got 400 kids in my high school, and I try to lead that school like it's about my own kids. And it actually is because I live in this community.
Right.
And I think if you take that approach to it, you're not going to hit a home run every single day, but at least get the bat off your shoulder and swing it and try to do some damage. I mean, that's my approach to how I lead. It's my approach to education. Teach that class like your son's in the front row. And I stole that. That's not me. That's Jonathan Alsheimer talks about that a lot. And there's so much power in that.
No, I love that part. Of course, treat the student as your kids, but I think write your own narrative. Otherwise, somebody else will. I think that is a beautiful thought. I think and very important thought. I'll definitely take home with me. Um, but again, if I talk about resilience, right? It's tested every day. And
Every day.
since the world is evolving rather too quickly and rather too in an uncharted territory right now, like AI. So how has that been going in terms of teachers' morale or teachers' um, apprehension? How has the resilience been tested around AI right now in your school district?
That's a great question. I talked a little bit earlier that we do have a very special school district that obviously you and your listeners could tell I take a lot of pride in.
Oh, for
Um,
sure.
but there is this sort of national rhetoric that teachers are leaving the field and administrators are getting out of the jobs. And how do you build that resiliency in those tough times? It's going to sound basic, but I think you have to dial back into the why did I get involved in this in the first place? My freshman year of college, I was an engineering major, and that
Oh.
was because I was good at math and I thought I'd make a lot of money.
Hmm.
I hated every class I took that was related to engineering. And
Hmm.
it, and I realized that this is not for me. And I started volunteering at a school, a little junior high school in Peoria, Illinois, and I loved it. And I remember telling my dad that I'm going to be a teacher, and I think he was like, "What are you doing? You're not going to make any money."
Yeah.
But it was something that I knew I enjoyed doing, and I look back at that moment, 25 plus years ago, it was such the right calling. And I think if you remember why you got into this thing in the first place, I hope that educators like me can dial back on those memories and grab the sort of the heartstrings and think about I got into this because I wanted to work with those kids. I got into this because I wanted to lead these people. And for me, that's where when your resiliency is tested, listen, sadly, nobody remembers the wins, but they remember the losses when with the people that supported you in those losses.
Yeah.
I think it's so important when you can, I've got a couple superintendents that are down in the foxhole with me when times are tough. They call me, they text me, and I do likewise for them. We all have tough situations as superintendents. Those fires happen every single day.
Right.
And even as teachers, I think if you're blessed enough to be in a district that has great colleagues you can lean in on, don't isolate yourself. You can build your resiliency by talking to other people and realizing that you don't have to do this alone. Especially in those tough times. The wins are fun. They're a great time. But unfortunately, I think as humans, we live in the losses too much.
Oh, yeah, we
And you
practice.
could you can go down dark rabbit holes during those losses, especially if you isolate. So
No,
leaning into other people's key.
agreed. But what about the AI aspect right now? How are teachers in your district or administrators, including you, how are you guys dealing with it and how is it feeling like?
Yeah, great question. I think there's a sort of a microcosm to what I just said. I think a lot of superintendents are confused. A lot of school districts don't even have AI policies yet. I can tell you that in my district, we kind of started the AI train a few years ago, and we had some teachers going in on it, some teachers putting walls up. No way, I'm not doing this. It's plagiarism, it's cheating. I use AI as an assistant for myself all the time now.
Yeah.
I'm coming up with different ideas and perspectives that I never considered, and I think a lot of people are getting closer to that. But there's this unknown, and everybody from the far one end of, AI is Terminator, Rise of Machines, and then there's the other people that are using it for every little function out there or everything, and just stepping back away from any type of tough decision making and say, well, yeah, Chat GPT told me that. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that we're doing in our district is that we are working with a group called the Illinois Learning Technology to try to come up with what is the right size solution for our district. And then can it become sort of a living document that's modifiable each year to see how do we benefit our kids best? How do we benefit our adults best? Because it's, as you know, it's evolving daily. I mean, it's changing so much of what we do. So I think that as leaders, it's like anything else. The more things change, the more they stay the same. This is an innovation that has great capabilities, but it also, with great power, comes great responsibility. How
Right.
do we steer the ship properly? Like Spider-Man there from that quote from the movie, how do we steer it properly to implement it the best for us? And I think a lot of administrators are kind of struggling with what's the solution. It's a gray area. We don't know. And
Yeah.
I know for me, I've started to lean in on some of these ed tech companies that know more about it than I do. And just listening and being vulnerable and learning more is the best way you can continue to grow.
No, absolutely. I think educators' concern around academic integrity or students' loss of critical thinking, because they will blindly outsource their work to AI and not being very responsible and ethical about it. I think those concerns are very legit. And but the difference with this technology is, let's say we take an example of financial literacy. Every district, every state come up with a guidelines. Then every school came up with a policy. Then teachers were done professional development around that. Then curriculum was chosen, and then teaching happened. So there was a sequential flow of things in that case. But in the case of AI, it's upside down. Students are the first who are already on it, especially in high school. 80% to 90% on an average are actually using it every day. That we can't wait for state policies and school policies and professional development to actually happen sequentially. We have to go literally in parallel right now to make it work happen. Otherwise, we're going to lose that. We're going to play a catch up game, like in case of social media. You know, students are coming up with daily new problems and new issues, and we didn't know what to do about it. Like for the longest time, I was not able to understand why would you put up a story for just 24 hours or just send it for once. Rather, you want to keep it for there. So, so I think it's important that you have to quickly adapt, quickly develop around it, and yeah. Uh,
I think you make a great point here, and I'll add a quick story for you that amplifies exactly what you're saying, right? So I've got a 12-year-old son, and he's got quite the wit on him.
mhm,
And he was in the back of my truck working on his laptop for homework for school one day. And I was talking to him while I'm driving. What are you working on? He's like, oh, I'm doing this. I'm not going to say the name of the software, but math problems, basically drill and kill homework.
mhm,
And I said, well, what are you doing with your phone? And he's like, well, I've already hit the 90% minimum threshold, and I don't want to do any of this anymore because it's all repetitive and stupid. So
mhm,
I'm using Grok to to basically complete the work for him, and then use it on the laptop just to be done because it's a waste of my time. I already know how to do it. I've already hit the number, but I've got 100 more problems to do.
mhm.
That lesson right there showed me that in education, we say sometimes we're learning to fly the plane at 30,000 feet. Well, AI is different. I'm not even flying the plane. My son is, and he's 12, and
Yeah,
he knows more about flying the plane than I do, but he's relying on AI to teach him how to do it.
yeah,
In this case, my son was doing homework that he saw no meaning in, no reason to learn it,
mhm,
and Grok or whatever he was using was a way to just basically check the boxes, be done, and move on because he didn't see any meaning to it. And that resonated with me that homework, relationships, they should all have meaning. We
yeah,
should not be drilling and killing our kids with repetitive 100 problem math assignments in this case for through a software company just to check a box.
Right.
So I think that's a good lesson for all educators out there that without meaning, without purpose, without relationship building, kids can use AI to get out of those things. And that's what my 12-year-old son was doing.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I have a very thought-provoking question. Let's say you had this AI tool which is completely magical in your opinion. So what would be the biggest problem right now that you have that you want that AI tool to solve for?
Okay, so what's a pain point in my life that AI could solve?
Yeah, that you may not know it's already solving, but yeah, you want it to solve for.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. One of the things that I'm struggling with in my entire life is I know that the writing that I'm doing, the retreats that I sponsor, the leadership that I'm doing within and outside of my district is super, super powerful and so fulfilling for other people.
Hmm.
How do you get that message out to people who don't even know you? Right? How do you self-promote something that when you don't want to self-promote? You know,
Hmm.
that's something that I'm sort of struggling with as a pain point of I know there's value in the book that I wrote. I know there's value in the leadership retreats that I put on, but I also don't want to, create billboards that say, come to our retreat, buy my book. I don't want to self-promote in that way. So I'm sure I could get into AI world to figure out ways to solve that point. I just haven't done it yet.
Interesting. So if I can say broadly, how AI can solve marketing for you in a way,
Yeah,
without
yeah.
yeah, without you being upfront selling it door to door, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I tell people because I've had people tell me you need to go all in on this and just, do this, these executive leadership retreats. And I said, no, I like my job. I don't ever plan on leaving my job. I enjoy it.
Yeah.
This is just something that's like a passion project but it has really taken off. I mean, we're bringing our retreats outside of Illinois to other states next year. I just presented at a conference in Indiana
Mm.
about it, and they were like, "Yeah, bring it here. We want this here." And yeah, I would love to do that, but at the same time, it's empowering and really inspiring. But I still want to be a superintendent. I still love my job, and in 10 years that could change. Who knows? But at
Yeah.
this point, I'm very happy.
No, absolutely. And I'm pretty sure even if, first of all, you are itself doing a great job at your current job, but even after you have a lot more options, I could already see it in your
Yeah,
public speaking or book writing. I think no doubt about it. Okay, I'm
I
gonna ask
appreciate that.
you again, last question, and it's gonna be tricky again about the budgets. So many districts are facing tight budgets right now. There's very non-clarity, uncertainty. So how can school leaders with this current situation can prioritize strategies around staff well-being or resilience or professional development, basically solving for the resilience part in this tight budget constraints.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, there are budget constraints, especially as people have sort of this unknown gray area of what's the Federal Department of Education doing? What are they doing to flow through title funds? There are some significant questions there. But I do look back at like just a very simplistic thought that I answer a lot of my tough questions with. Is this good for our kids? If
Mm.
the answer is yes, I will figure out ways to make this happen. Now, my budget in my district is very different than other districts. I recognize and respect that. But at the same time, it's a leadership thing that I've always prescribed to. If it's good for our kids, I'm going to do it. And if there are walls or boundaries, I'm going to figure out ways to go over those walls, through those walls, or around those walls.
Right.
How I do that is challenging. I've got title funds set aside for certain professional development things that we're doing, but I also don't want to lead my district like my neighbor does over here. And I don't want to be stuck in 1997. I want to be progressive. I want our education to be meaningful, and I want my students to be successful when they leave me. I want them to be successful. So if I've got to find ways to develop resiliency and grit, because those are real, tangible skills that our kids need, I'm going to find ways to do it. And I think one way that districts can do it is you negotiate. You
Right.
know, you have a price that you're telling me, and I'm sorry, we can afford this. If you want to work with us, you will. If you don't, okay, I'll find a competitor. That's a harsh reality that a lot of leaders are facing right now is I understand the value of what you're providing, but here's the reality of what I can afford. And some companies will work with you and some won't, and that's fine. I see like Power School, for example. They're just buying up everybody.
Yeah.
And when they do that, that's great for them. But the reality is when your company becomes so large, you lose the service side of it. And to
Right.
me, as a smaller school district, that service is paramount. When I decide that we're going to partner with a company, I want to know who that person is. I can pick up the phone and call or schedule a Zoom with, and they're going to get on there, soon. Unfortunately, some of these larger companies that are buying everybody up don't do that, and they won't negotiate with you. But
Right.
I see, and you probably see too, the ed tech startup world, especially with AI, there's so many opportunities out there. So I think it's about my job as a superintendent to be creative in my problem solving, but it's also reliant on me to find what's the best fit for my district. It's not going to be the same for the district next door. So I'll leverage what I can and figure out the best solutions, but I want my kids successful. I'm going to figure that out. And we're doing some unique things at our school district, combining positions, and I got teachers teaching two different classes at the same time. I mean, it's unique, but we're making it work, and I'm not following the same model as the district next door.
Right. No, absolutely. I think this is all about negotiating and identifying what's or prioritizing. Well said on that part. So yeah, I think those were my questions. Anything
That's
that
good.
you wanna add in the end, maybe as an advice for other school leaders?
I think if I could share anything, I mean, we've had a great conversation here, and I appreciate you having me on because it's been nice talking to you. I think that I'll dial back to one of the first things I shared with you. I'm not afraid to be vulnerable. I'm not afraid to ask questions. And I think as leaders, we wear that sort of suit of armor that I talked about, that we have to have this force field of invincibility. And you don't have to. You don't have to go it alone. You don't have to solve every problem. You don't have to have all the answers. Ask people for help. Lean in on those relationships you've already built and pick up a phone, send a text, make the call, and just ask somebody else for some help. I think that's one of the biggest things we can do as leaders is not isolate and just, I talk about it in my book and our retreats. We got to find ways to stay in this game. And stay in the game is an expression that I use to talk about the power of education and why we need to stay a part of it. Why we don't want to leave these kids and leave our buildings and keep working with keep working with the future of our nation. We've got to, we're all stress leaders, but we've
Right.
got to stay in the game.
No, I can't agree with that like more. I think it's perfectly said. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing so much information, so much important knowledge with all us. So thank you so much
Thanks
for
for having me on.
yeah, perfect.
Thank you for watching. Join our journey at Tomo Club